Okay, so today we're diving into this whole golden hydrogen thing.
Yeah.
You sent over this article about it, and honestly, it's pretty wild. Like, could this actually be the future of energy?
Well, it's definitely a really interesting new way of thinking about hydrogen, that's for sure. I mean, instead of having to produce it, right?
Right.
We could be tapping into a source that already exists.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We could just sort of like skip that whole energy intensive production step. So like, how did we even find out about this naturally occurring hydrogen?
So it all starts with this accidental discovery back in 1987
Okay.
in this village, Buakabuku, in Mali.
In Mali.
Yeah, they were drilling for water and they hit this well. And it turns out it wasn't water that was coming out. It was this flammable gas.
What?
Yeah, almost pure hydrogen.
Wow. That's being in the right place at the right time. That's incredible.
Talk about a lucky strike, right?
Yeah.
But it was more than just a lucky strike, right? Because it really challenged a lot of the assumptions that scientists had at the time.
Okay.
You know, for decades, the focus had been on fossil fuels. And so the idea that there could be these massive underground reserves of hydrogen, it was basically ignored.
It's like they were so focused on what they knew, they didn't even think to look for anything else.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, hydrogen, it's hard to contain. It's volatile.
Right.
So there wasn't a lot of, I guess, incentive to explore, you know, how do we even get this stuff out of the ground?
Right.
But then you have this discovery in Buakabuku.
And it kind of changes everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, the article mentions similar discoveries, you know, in Australia, in the US, even in the Alps.
Yeah.
So it really makes you think, like, how common is this stuff?
That's what everyone wants to know.
Yeah.
I mean, if these pockets of golden hydrogen are as widespread as some believe, you know, it could completely change everything about how we think about energy.
Totally. Okay, so let's unpack this whole golden hydrogen thing a little bit. The article mentions this process called serpentinization,
Right.
which honestly sounds kind of intimidating.
It's actually not as complicated as it sounds.
Okay, good.
Basically, what happens is you have water deep underground, and it reacts with these iron-rich rocks under very specific temperature and pressure conditions.
So it's like you need the right ingredients, the right environment, and then boom, hydrogen.
Exactly. So during this reaction, the water molecule split and they release hydrogen.
So it's like a natural hydrogen factory.
Exactly. Powered by geological processes that have been happening for, you know, millennia.
That's incredible. But okay, so the article also mentioned this other process, radiolysis.
Right.
Is that a big part of this whole thing too?
It's another way that natural hydrogen can be formed, but it's less common than this serpentinization process. Basically, you have natural radiation from within the Earth's crust, and that breaks down water molecules.
Okay.
And again, releases hydrogen.
So you've got these natural processes happening underground, potentially creating this huge energy source.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think a lot of our listeners are probably wondering, like, okay, but how do we actually get to it? It's down there, but, you know.
$1 million question, right?
Right.
And it's not a simple answer. I mean, extracting this golden hydrogen, it comes with its own set of challenges.
Oh, sorry.
It's tricky, right? Because hydrogen, it's not like other fuels.
Right.
We talked about how volatile it is.
Yeah.
That's a huge challenge. It's such a tiny molecule.
Right.
It can leak really easily.
Oh, I see.
From pipelines, storage tanks.
Yeah.
So you're talking about potential safety hazards, you know, and just losing energy during transport.
So it's not as easy as like just sticking a giant straw in the ground and sucking it up.
If only it were that easy.
Right.
We're going to need some pretty specific technology to extract this stuff safely, efficiently.
Okay.
And not just get it out of the ground, but do it in a way that makes sense economically and minimizes, you know, the environmental risks.
And speaking of environmental risks, the article mentioned some potential downsides with the extraction process. I mean, it feels like every time we find a promising solution, there's always a catch, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's always a trade-off.
Yeah.
I mean, golden hydrogen, it is a clean energy source when you burn it, right? But getting it out of the ground, we got to be realistic about what kind of impact that's going to have.
So not totally green then. Not yet, at least.
Yeah. We're not there yet. We have to be really careful and assess, like, what's it going to do to the groundwater?
Right.
Land use.
Yep.
And then there's even the risk of induced seismicity, which, you know.
We don't want to create earthquakes trying to get to this stuff.
Exactly. We don't want to solve one problem by creating a new one.
Exactly.
So it's really important, you know. Research into sustainable extraction, it's just as important as finding the hydrogen in the first place.
Totally. So what needs to happen? Like, what's the next step?
Well, the good news is there's a lot of really interesting innovation happening right now.
Okay.
I mean, some people are talking about using the existing oil and gas infrastructure
for
transporting the hydrogen.
Okay.
And then, of course, you have people looking at totally new approaches,
Right.
trying to minimize that environmental footprint even further.
That's great. So it sounds like golden hydrogen, it's sort of forcing us to rethink this whole industry.
It is.
Like from the ground up.
Across the board. And then, there's another layer to all of this.
Oh, okay.
And the regulations.
Right. Because this is so new.
Right, exactly. There isn't a whole lot out there specifically for this kind of hydrogen extraction.
So that could be a problem, even if we figure out the science, if we don't have the rules in place.
Yeah. It can definitely create some roadblocks. I mean, the article mentions this case in Spain.
Okay.
In Monzon.
Yeah.
They found this massive deposit of hydrogen.
Huge. Like how huge are we talking?
1 million tons.
Wow.
Potentially.
That's a lot of energy.
It is. It's a huge amount. But they're stuck,
Why? What's the holdup?
The regulations. They haven't caught up yet.
Oh, wow.
They've got the technology, they've got the resource, but they're in limbo.
So that's a big hurdle to overcome. It's like the science is moving faster than the
and then paperwork.
than the paperwork, exactly. But okay, let's say we do figure it out.
Right.
We get the rules sorted, we figure out the extraction. What does a future actually look like running on golden hydrogen?
I mean, that's when it gets really exciting, right? We're talking about completely changing the way we think about energy.
Totally.
Yeah.
So what changes, like, practically?
Well, for one, imagine a world where we don't need fossil fuels as much.
Okay, yeah.
We have this readily available source of hydrogen.
That's much cleaner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Less carbon emissions.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge for fighting climate change.
Absolutely. But it goes beyond just the environmental impact, too.
Okay.
Think about the geopolitical implications.
Okay, yeah. So how does this shake things up globally? I mean,
Well, right now, you've got a few countries, right?
Right.
That control most of the oil and gas.
Right.
But if we can actually make this golden hydrogen thing work,
Yeah.
that all goes out the window.
Wow.
It's a whole new ballgame.
So it's not just a new energy source. It's like a whole new world order.
Potentially, yeah.
Wow.
The countries that have these big golden hydrogen reserves,
Yeah.
they become major players.
Yeah.
New trade routes pop up,
That were-
new alliances.
Right.
You could see entire economies transformed by this.
It's wild to think about. But okay, let's bring it down to earth for a second.
Okay.
How would this actually affect, like, everyday people?
Well, imagine, instead of filling up your car with gas, you're filling it up with hydrogen.
Okay.
Or heating your home with a fuel cell. Right.
Right.
Powered by this naturally occurring hydrogen.
Yeah. I mean, those technologies exist,
They do.
but the cost, right?
Yeah.
Getting your hands on the hydrogen, that's always been the problem.
Exactly. Golden hydrogen could change all that.
Okay.
Make these clean technologies actually affordable, accessible.
Make them normal.
Exactly. And it's not just about cars and houses, right? I mean, I think about planes, ships.
Oh, yeah. Whole industries.
Exactly. Huge industries that are desperate to find ways to be, less polluting.
To decarbonize, yeah.
Exactly. Golden hydrogen could be the answer.
And like this one discovery could unlock so many things. It's incredible. But it also feels like, we're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the big question marks? Like, what are the things that researchers are still trying to wrap their heads around?
Well, I think the biggest one, right, is this actually sustainable?
Oh, right. Long term.
Yeah. Like, we don't want to just create a new energy source. We need to make sure that we can use it
They
responsibly.
don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past.
Exactly. So, how do we extract it? How do we use it? How do we minimize the impact? We got to think about the whole life cycle.
Right.
And then there's the question of, can we actually scale this up?
Right. Make enough of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we get it out of the ground fast enough, to actually meet global demand?
Right. So a lot to figure out. But I mean, the potential is huge.
Oh, absolutely.
It really does feel like this golden hydrogen thing. It's not just about finding a new fuel. It's bigger than that.
It is.
It's about like rethinking our entire relationship with energy.
It's challenging assumptions.
Yeah.
Pushing boundaries. It's really exciting.
It is exciting. It's a good reminder that there's still so much we don't know
Totally.
and so much more to discover.
Yeah.
Well, on that note of endless possibility, I think we're going to have to wrap up this deep dive for now. But we want to hear from you. Do you think this golden hydrogen is going to live up to the hype? What excites you most about it? Head over to our website, share your thoughts, join the conversation, and until next time, keep those curiosity engines running.